Okay, good evening everybody and welcome to the first meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee. This is a meeting of the Council held in public. It is not a public meeting. There's no fire drill planned, so if the fire alarm sounds, please leave by the exit nearest to the large screen at the front of the room and proceed down the fire exit to the courtyard. Once it's safe to return, councillors will receive a text message. Officers will also advise when it's safe to return to the meeting. We are recording this meeting this evening using our webcasting system. The webcast will be transmitted live and will also be available on the Council's website following the meeting. All mobile devices should be switched off or set to silent, please, so that the meeting is not interrupted by ringtones. I would also like to say that everyone, please remember this is an apolitical meeting. There's no sides in here. We're all on the same side, and can we all keep it peaceful and nice, please? So there you go. Have we any apologies for absence? Okay, so we do the declarations of interest first, yeah? Anybody? No, thank you.
We have apologies from Councillor Alan Davies with Councillor Hilliard in his place.
Thank you. Has everybody read the minutes and are you happy to vote on them? Yep. Yeah. Right, so is everyone for? Those for? Those against? And abstain? Okay.
You can abstain. Yes, so can I just clarify?
Okay, so we need a general consensus of a change of order from item 5 and 9. Is that right? Yep. Yeah. Is that okay with everybody? Yep. Any objections? No. Okay, thank you. Right, now we're going to receive a verbal update regarding the Council's external audit. Who's that from? Oh, Owen.
Thank you, Chair. So I just thought I'd give an update on the position with the external audit, because I'm obviously mindful there's lots of new committee members. So members will be aware that there's a capacity issue with external auditors across the country in the local government area. Our previous auditors was a firm called BDO, who comes to the committee fairly regularly and will probably be here for the September committee meeting. At the moment, they are still working on our 2020-21 set of accounts. They're hopeful in recent communication to bring that to the committee as signed off in September. But again, I can't guarantee that will be the case until they work through their outstanding work that, again, we're told is fairly limited. So outstanding after that, we have 2 full years of audits. We have 21-22, 22-23. And the accounts are just becoming due for the 23-24 audit, i.e. last year's accounts, and we're presenting them for you just for consideration in September meeting, not for approval. Obviously the audit won't be completed, but so you can basically give us any comments on those for the time being. The 23-24 audit will be actually undertaken by a different firm, Ernst Young, so they're our new auditors coming into that financial year. There's been lots of discussion, debate around the sector, really about how the audit process can be speeded up and basically catch up with that limited capacity. There was and has been consulted on a number of times a process where there'd be backstop dates put in for the outstanding audits. These need regulations to be laid before Parliament before they can be enacted. Obviously that got suspended with the election period, obviously with Parliament being suspended. So that date originally was going to be the end of September, and what that would mean is any work that wasn't done up to that period would mean the auditors would have to put a disclaimer in to say we're unable to form an opinion on these because you haven't had a chance to complete the work. That along those lines, still to be determined. Obviously, September is now very close, and we're not aware what a new backstop date would be. It's rumored that might be December, but again, we need to hear more really from the government when that might be laid and that might happen. So just to really say that that is an ongoing issue for us. We started discussions with the new auditors for the 23-24 accounts, and they're going to come in and start doing some work. But again, because the previous years are very likely to be disclaimed, there'll probably be a disclaimer on the 23-24 years until the whole lot sort of works through the system and there's clean audits on those accounts. So again, this has been really going on for sort of last couple of years, but just so the audit committee is up to date. And Steve from BDO can have a further discussion on the outstanding work and where that's going at the next committee meeting.
So, a couple of questions.
Sorry. I thought you had, sorry.
Okay, so thank you very much, Owen, for your contribution. I see our independent person would like to speak.
Yeah, sorry, should have put my hand up. Apologies. Yeah, $1 million question. 2 questions, I guess. What's your gut feeling on the September sign-off, or for the 2021 accounts?
I'm hopeful that will be met, and again we've had an ongoing dialogue for the last few months with the audit. I couldn't guarantee it, but I'm hopeful.
Okay, thank you. And have you got any concerns around, you know, this issue? Because clearly 3 years accounts, 3 years of accounts unaudited, so.
Yeah, it is obviously very far from ideal. Obviously, we want that external assurance that accounts are true and fair that audit brings, and also for residents as well. From our perspective, we're comfortable the accounts are reflective. Obviously, we need that external assurance to ensure that. I think, again, we've been lobbying to try and get this whole situation addressed as quickly as possible. It is disappointing. It is slipping again. Obviously, we just need to make sure we can engage auditors as best we can.
Thank you. I know it's out of your control. It's a national problem. So can we get Ernst & Young here at some point in the future? Is that planned as well?
So generally what happens is the external auditor will come along to most meetings, and at the end of the meeting there's also an opportunity for the chair to discuss with the external auditors anything they want to pick up with our officers there, so any concerns you may have can be raised as part of that. And they will bring reports regularly to the committee. So, for example, we have their planning approach. Obviously, we have their final report on the accounts. They will be regular attendees at the committee going forward.
Thank you.
Has anyone else got any pointers? Councillor Murphy.
Sorry, I missed right at the beginning. Why are the accounts so far behind?
It's a national issue with a lack of capacity in the external profession in the local government sector to be able to give enough resource to see through the audits.
So it's the company that we're using hasn't got resources, or is it the government as or is it the wider thing hasn't got resources?
The public sector audits in local government, they're done by a range of companies, so, private companies, and it's about 5, and it's a resource issue across all those companies in that sector.
And ongoing, I run my own businesses. It was rumoured at one time that the tax people were going to sort of ask for interim end of year or end of quarter, if you like, figures, so that they could do them in a better. And my accountants sort of saying, why don't we do them every 3 months, so that by the end he's on his way doing it on the way through. Would there be any value to having an external auditor in the office as such on a regular basis to continue auditing as the year goes on, rather than put it on his lap like I do on the 5th of April, 6th of April, and say, there you go for the year. He's already working on it right the way through. So actually on the 6th, he's only got to do the week or 2 weeks before.
So we discuss an audit plan with the auditors every year. It's not been ideal. Normally they would do an interim audit and they do a final audit to try and speed that process up. So that is part of the discussion, but again it's up to their resource availability and around their other clients. But that is part of it. We normally do an interim audit where they'll come in and do some interim work and they'll do some more further on to finish it off. So that is part of the planning process, and they bring a planning report to the committee, and again you'll have sight of that.
Anyone else? Comments? No? Right, thank you. Right, so the draft work programme. Anne? My apologies, I've made a mistake. I'm sorry. It be the annual corporate risk management report from Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So if I can ask everyone to turn to agenda number 5, which is pages 49 through to 64. So the main purpose of this report is to provide an overview of the Council's risk management arrangements and activities undertaken during 23-24, and to signpost further work to be undertaken during this year. The report confirms that the Council has in place a robust risk management framework, and that during 2023-24 there has been a significant amount of focus on risk across the organisation. So we have in place a risk management policy, strategy and toolkit, which was approved by the Audit and Risk Committee in June 2023. The policy seeks to ensure a risk-aware culture within the Council's decision-making processes to improve the quality of life for its residents and the community. So back in 2022-23, we defined our risk appetite, which is the amount of risk the Council is willing to accept in order to achieve its objectives. This doesn't mean that the Council cannot take risks outside of these appetites, but when we do, we ensure that we've undertaken due diligence and ensure that decisions are made on an informed basis. So the aim is to establish boundaries for risk-taking and ensure that risks accepted are proportionate to the possible rewards. So in enclosure number 1, enclosure number 1 contains all corporate and significant risks that are above appetite. We continually review our risk profiles for the Council, and we work closely with all of the services and our project and programme management office, and this remains a vital piece of work. So on enclosure number 2, we have the 17 corporate risks. So there are a number of these risks that are amber and impact the Council's governance arrangements, and they will be highlighted in our annual governance statement, which is an item later on in the agenda. So these key areas include project management, performance management, information governance, failure to maintain a sustainable financial position, and our local plan. With regards to our operational risk management, obviously the insurance service covers the Council for our 24 separate insurance policies covering liability, motor and property risks. It receives and handles almost 200 claims per year, and some of these are very complex and take a number of years to resolve. The service also has a budget that can be used to help towards mitigations, and the services can apply for funding to be helped to use towards these. In 2023-24, the service reduced the total claims of up to a value of 94,000, which represents a 67% reduction when compared to original reserves. The Audit and Risk Working Group undertakes reviews which examine and bring challenge to corporate, significant and certain high-level service, project and partnership risks. The remit of the group also includes reviewing the findings from audit reports, especially where limited outcomes were recorded or where there's been limited progress in implementing the recommendations. So during 2023-24, there were a total of 5 working groups. It's proposed that a programme of meetings be set up for 24-25, with the first meeting taking place in July, followed by meetings in September, October, November, January and March. These meetings would review the specific risks that are red or the limited audit reviews. So thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions, anybody? Right, so we're going to go to the vote then, and I'll read it out. The recommendation is that the contents of this report be noted, and that the committee agree that the Audit and Risk Management Working Group should be reconvened for 24-25 to deliver a programme of corporate risk-related reviews. For those for? Well, that's carried. Thank you, everyone. Item 6. This is the, is it 6? Annual Corporate Risk Management Report, and that's Sarah again.
Item 7.
Item 7. I'm getting confused. I'm so sorry. Internal Audit Annual Report and Quarter 4 Progress Report, and that is Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I direct members to what was item 7, which is the Internal Audit Annual Report and Quarter 4 Progress Report that starts on pages 65 through to 133. So I'm presenting 3 enclosures. Enclosure 1 is the Internal Audit Account for Progress Report for Quarter 4. So this reflects on the work we undertook for the last quarter of the year, January through to March. So in that period we completed a further 5 audit reviews. A further 2 are currently at draft report stage. In relation to those 5 audit reviews we completed, 4 were provided an adequate assurance opinion, and 1 was a consultancy piece of work where we don't actually provide an assurance opinion. The progress report also provides the headlines from the work of the internal fraud team, account fraud team for the year, and reports savings of £161,000 for the year 23-24, and non-cashable savings of 1.1 million. If I may now turn to enclosure 2, which is the annual report. So we've completed 10 reviews during 23-24, where an assurance opinion was provided. 6 received an adequate assurance opinion, 1 limited, and 1 no assurance. What is disappointing, there are a number of deferred audits, as you will see from the table, where for a number of reasons we couldn't undertake those audit reviews. This was due in part to a lack of staff in the service departments to enable us to actually conduct the audit itself, a recent restructure in the service department, which means we couldn't undertake that audit, further time required by service departments to embed or allow for policy changes, and also one of the areas we want to look at, it was on the list of IT development, so there's no point coming in to look at that area when it is subject to a new development or IT system coming in place. So, we would have made recommendations which would have been obsolete because they're going to put a new system in place. So that is now on hold. The main purpose of the annual report is to provide for an internal audit opinion on the whole year as a whole. So I'm happy that sufficient work was undertaken during the course of the year to draw a reasonable conclusion on the adequacy and effectiveness of the Council's arrangements for governance, internal control and risk management. Based on the work we performed during 23-24 and other sources of assurance I've been able to obtain, I'm of the opinion that adequate assurance can be taken that the Council's risk management, internal control and governance processes in operation during the year to 31st of March 2024 generally accord with proper practice and are fundamentally sound, although there are opportunities to improve the arrangements to enhance the Council's governance framework. Significant concerns were raised by us in relation to a number of audit areas, particularly in relation to volunteers, the use of volunteers, and the claiming of expenses and certain payroll deductions. Finally, we turn into enclosure 3. I've undertaken an assessment of the counter-fraud function, and essentially, apart from a few minor areas for improvement, no significant gaps were identified in terms of the operation of the counter-fraud function. I'm quite happy to take any questions.
Anybody? The independent person first.
Thank you. Mike, you talked about putting some of the risks on hold because of resources. What's the plan for that going forward?
When you say some of the risks, do you mean some of the audits, sorry?
Yes.
Yeah. Those audits that were deferred have been picked up in this year's annual plan, so they will be undertaken this year.
Okay. And you're happy with the resourcing? You said you had to restructure some of the resourcing and resourcing shortfalls. You're happy with where that's gone for this year, or the plan for the rest of this year?
At present, no department's come back to me to say that actually they're not happy for me to undertake the audit. That's not to say when I actually kick it off, they will not come up with various reasons for me not to undertake the audit. But at present, I've not had any, what should I say, for a better word, excuses to say why I can't undertake that piece of work. So at the moment, it's all systems go, everyone seems to be happy, and we will be able to undertake those audits. But I will keep this committee up to date in terms of what's happening.
Councillor Murphy.
So right, my question has basically been asked, have we got sufficient resources now? Was the question that I was going to say.
I have sufficient resources, and as an internal audit manager, my team, we are properly resourced to undertake the audits. The issue is with service managers and not having the resources to facilitate us doing the work. So obviously we go in and we need to ask questions to certain officers. If those officers are not in post or they've got lack of resources to, essentially we need to have time with managers to ask them certain questions. If they're not got the resources to support the internal audit, they may say, sorry, it's not the best time to do that audit. We don't have the resources. We've just been subject to a restructure. Can you come back another time? So it's not me with a lack of resources. It's actually the service department with a lack of resources to allow me to come in and do the audit, because they have to actually put time aside to allow me to come in, because obviously I'm taking them away from their day-to-day work. So it's quite resource intensive. Internal audit comes in. We try to do most of the work ourselves without the need to speak to managers, because most of the information we want is online. It's electronic these days. So it's not like the old days when it was on paper and we had to go and physically request it and obtain it. So yeah, it's just the service department's not having the time to facilitate an audit at that point in time.
Surely, though, the objective of your audit is to come in and get the situation audited. If there is a problem in that department, it seems that a manager can just turn around and say, oh, well, at the moment we're a bit busy, I'll go away and come back in 6 months. That surely isn't the idea of an audit. And the idea of the audit is to go in and say, we want the situation and we want to look at it now.
I will leave that one to Owen to answer.
Mr. Sparks.
Chair. Obviously, services and other things come along, other priorities come along at particular points in time. So sometimes things have to be agile, things need to move about. That is part of life in local government. Obviously, if an audit that Mike deems to be high risk and we need to look at it and it is pushed back and we don't feel that's appropriate, he will escalate that to me and my colleagues and we will ensure that is undertaken. So obviously there's always movement within it because things happen for whatever reasons. But obviously, if there's a risk we think it needs to be addressed, we'll escalate that and we'll address that appropriately.
Any further comments, yeah? No? Okay. Right, so the recommendation is that the contents of the Q4 progress report be received and noted, and that the contents of the internal audit annual report 23-24 together with the fraud self-assessment be received and noted. Is everybody happy? Yep. Do you want to vote on that? Yep. Can we all show our hands, please? Thank you. And that's carried. Okay, so next I'm going to call on Mr. Sparks to present the Capital and Investment Strategy Annual Report.
Thank you, Chair. For those who are new to the committee, these will become a regular feature. So these cover our capital programme, our borrowing and investment activities. These areas are heavily regulated by statute and guidance. And as part of that, we produce 3 reports a year that will come to this committee. We have the first one is part of the budget setting, so that will come to us in sort of January, February time. Then we have a mid-year report update, and then we have the outturn report for these activities for the previous year, which this is that outturn report. Audit and Risk will have the initial review to make sure they're comfortable with it. Any comments are then received and passed on to Cabinet, who review it, and then it goes to full council. So there's complete oversight of these activities, and obviously the indicators that underpin it and support it. So you'll see these on a regular basis, and this is the outturn report for 23-24. So let's go through the report in a little bit of detail for members. So the main report itself is really considered as part of enclosure number 2, which is on page 143 of the agenda. The first section there is an outturn of the capital programme, and that shows an underspend after carry forwards of £850,000. That is to do with asset management work that wasn't undertaken due to slippage. That gets taken through its asset management reserve, and that work will be picked up and reprofiled in the following years. There is slippage on both the HRA and the general fund programme. That's fairly normal with projects really taken longer than anticipated. Those resources will be carried forward and again picked up as part of that programme outturn in this year and thereafter. The report then goes on to pick up our treasury management activities. So that is our borrowing and investment activities for the year. Just to note that in terms of borrowing, the overall amount of borrowing we have has increased by £5.6 million over the year to just short of £362 million, with an average interest rate of 2.94%. Where we've had surplus cash, again, the average interest rate received is 4.96%, and that returned those cash levels higher than anticipated when we set the budget initially, so we've got a higher income there, which helps to offset the interest costs on the borrowing. The report also sets out, if you look at page 146, it's got a graph that shows how our borrowing has been in relation to some of the, we call them prudential indicators, and they're really sort of boundaries we set for the level of borrowing that we can undertake during the year without reverting back to yourselves and council for approval, and they're called the operational boundary and the authorised limit, and that graph shows we're way below those during the year, so again there's no cause for concern in that regard. The report then moves on to talk about our investment activity, and that is on page 148, and there are 3 main elements to that. One is some direct investments we have, and there are 6 investments that are set out on page 149. We have a target there of a net return of 2%, which was pretty much on target really for last year. We then have 1 commercial loan that's outstanding that's coming into an end in December, and again that has carried on as anticipated. And then if we skip down to our investment leases, we have 3 of those, and again they are on track. There's been no issues or concerns with those during the year as well. So that's our main commercial investment position. We then move on to enclosure number 3, and that is really a graphical representation of that text in that enclosure number 2, which just breaks down our borrowing and our investments, really showing the sources and where they come from, and that really just informs that text above enclosure number 2. And then the last bit is actually how we've performed against our prudential indicators, and that is on page 159, and there's a table in there that sets out a summary of the capital expenditure, our capital financing requirement, and what that is a total amount of borrowing we'd have to undertake to fund all of our capital programme. Obviously we generally lag behind that, use internal cash where we need to, so we don't borrow, we don't need to use our own money because obviously it's more cost efficient. and it also sets out our operational boundary and authorised limits, which is our agreed ceilings for investments and borrowing, as we said earlier, and again it shows that we're below those. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? No comments? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thanks, Chairman. Just on, if I've got the right point, I can't see the page number on the laptop, but on our acquisitions, 3 of them are below our 2% target. So I'm just curious as to what your team's strategy is to bring it up to 2%. I get that the net yield is above our target of 2%, but we've got some that are incredibly low. So I'm just wondering what is being done to restore that.
So there's been some voids in some of those properties, and there's been some work that's been undertaken. A number of those voids have now been let, and there are a couple remaining. And obviously what we're doing is working with our agent who supports us, Avison Young, to make sure we can fill those as quick as we can.
So on the next report that we get of this, will we see the net return start to come back up again, or?
Yeah, you'll obviously get an update at the mid-year position, which will show where they're at. We do expect there to be ups and downs across properties, because the voids come and they go, they come and they go. So we'll always be a little bit of movement up and down across those. So I think it's just to give you assurance that the portfolio is being actively managed to make sure it's limited as much as possible.
Any other comments? Nope. So the recommendation is that the annual report on capital investment and treasury management activities and the prudential indicators for 23-24 be noted. Any comments and observations made by the committee will be considered when the report is presented to Cabinet. Are we all in favour? Against? And abstaining. Okay, so the annual corporate risk management report from Sarah. Oh, the top ones, sorry,
Yeah.
I've read it. Me, they're all in that out of order. Annual government statement, that's Sarah again. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So this item is on page 13 to 47. So the purpose of the annual governance statement is to evaluate the council's governance arrangements as set out in its local code. The annual governance is an objective appraisal of our governance framework and shows that we have adequate arrangements which continue to be regarded as fit for purpose and comply with the council's local code of corporate governance. Also shows that we've met our legal and statutory obligations to our residents. So whilst the council has good foundations in relation to its governance arrangements, we recognise that further work is required to embed and strengthen some of the governance culture to ensure that both members and officers understand the value and importance governance plays within local government. Detailed action plans are being developed to support those areas where further work is required to enhance, review or embed arrangements. Following certification by the Leader of the Council and the Interim Chief Executive, these issues and agreed actions will form part of the Council's performance reporting framework and will be updated and monitored through the Audit and Risk Committee and the Corporate Leadership Team. The annual governance statement is attached as enclosure number 2 for consideration and endorsement. There are a number of ambulance governance areas which include the senior management restructure, roles and responsibilities, specifically in regards to expected behaviours to be displayed at each level of management within the council. Effective information governance, this is further to embed the importance and value of information governance across the organisation. Asset management, this is to deliver the key principles outlined in the asset management policy. The local plan, to prepare and update a plan, and is to review the strategic approach to monitor, measure and review the council's performance. And the final one is programme and project methodology, which is to agree clear project gateways and decision points within the council's project and programme management framework. Happy to take any questions.
Any comments? Anyone? No pointers? No one? Well? Okay, so the recommendation is that the contents of this report be noted and and that the committee agree that the Audit and Risk Management Working Group should be reconvened for 24-25 to deliver a programme of corporate risk related reviews. That's the right one. Right, okay, well it's not what it's got here. Okay, I'm sorry everyone, I've been given the wrong one. Okay, the recommendation is that the annual governance statement 23-24 as set out in enclosure number 2 and the 24-25 local corporate code of corporate governance as set out in enclosure number 1 be endorsed and referred to the leader and interim chief executive for certification. My apologies. So should we go to the vote? Those for? Those against? There's no one. Carried unanimously and away we go. Okay, and it's the last item I believe, is it?
It is.
It is, okay, so item 9 and that's the draft work programme to be presented by Annie. Thank you.
So if members will turn to pages 161 to 165, you'll see a draft work programme. Again, everything is quite fluid. Changes may happen as we're waiting for the external auditors to feedback, but Owen and his team will keep you updated. Any questions, please address the chair. Thank you.
Has anybody got any questions, please? No? Yeah. Right, okay, so the recommendation is that the committee considers and endorses items for inclusion in its work programme for the 24-25 municipal year. Who's for, please? Unanimous, and that's it. Thank you. So, can I close the meeting?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Okay, thank you everyone. It was a lovely meeting and thanks for being gentle with me. And see you next time.
Thank you.